Have you ever stood still for a moment, maybe by the kitchen counter or out on your porch, and felt a pang because the things you used to do without a second thought, like crouching to grab a pot or stepping over a puddle, now feel like climbing a hill? I've been there, staring at my own hands, rough from years of work, and wondering when they started trembling just holding a mug. Back in my early 60s, I was a whirlwind, up with the roosters, coffee brewing sharp and black, out the door to wrestle the day into submission. I'd split logs for the fire until sweat stung my eyes, tramp through the muddy woods with my hound, Jasper, baying at squirrels, or twirl my wife, Ellie, across the linoleum to some old crooner on the radio, her giggles lighting up the room. My legs were pistons, my grip like iron, my life a loud, steady beat I figured would play on forever. But past 65, that beat stuttered. My back locked up mid-chop, my knees creaked like a rusty hinge, and I'd slump into my rocker at dusk, chest heaving, watching the fireflies blink, asking myself when strong turned into struggle. If that rings in your bones, you're not alone. I've seen it in your letters, felt it in the quiet nods at the feed store, that slow fade of mobility, the way age sneaks in and pulls the world in tight around you. After 65, it's tempting to think the dance is done, the stage dimming, your steps lost to the shadows. But here's what I've carved out for harmonic aging. A body that slows doesn't chain your life, it hands you a new score. This isn't about giving up, it's about 7 ways I reclaimed my rhythm, found new melodies, and lived louder than ever, no matter the years. It's not just my song, it's woven from the lives I've brushed against, folks from 65 to 85 who faced the same creaks and found their own music. It's a long tale, but stick with me, by the end, you might hear your own chords ringing brighter than you thought possible. Story 1. Sitting steady with resistance bands. Let's start with Clara, 66, who thought her loom was lost to her forever. I met her at a craft fair, her booth draped with wool scarves, her fingers tracing the threads like old friends, her voice soft but carrying a weight of years. Clara was a weaver, her hands flew over the shuttle, her feet pumped the treadles, her days a tapestry of color and rhythm. She'd sit for hours, the clack of the loom her heartbeat, her back straight, her spirit soaring. She wove blankets for her kids, rugs for her porch, each piece a story of her life, her daughter's wedding, her son's first fish, the storms she'd weathered with her husband, Tom, by her side. But arthritis slipped in like a thief, gnarling her knuckles, stiffening her shoulders. Reaching for yarn hurt, pedaling the loom ached, and she'd stand by her window, staring at the dusty frame, her chest tight. "That's me out there," she'd whisper, her world shrinking to a creaky chair by the hearth. Her sister, Lena, saw it. The way Clara's eyes dulled, the way she'd rub her hands and sigh. Lena dragged her to a community center, promising a seated exercise class. Clara laughed, sharp and bitter. "Sitting? To fix this?" It felt like a cruel jest. But Lena's stubbornness won, and Clara shuffled in, plopping into a folding chair, arms crossed, skepticism thick as the wool she missed. The instructor, a wiry woman named Marta with a grin like sunshine, handed her a resistance band, a stretchy blue strip that looked flimsy next to Clara's heavy memories. "Pull it," Marta said, her voice firm but kind. Clara fumbled, arm lifts, leg extensions, her breath hitching, her joints protesting. But then, a flicker. Her fingers steadied, her shoulders loosened, a pull like threading the warp. She started slow, 5 minutes a day, sitting by her loom, the band taut between her hands. She'd picture her patterns, each stretch a row, each tug a knot. Her hands grew surer, her back eased, and soon, she was back at it, perched on a cushioned stool, the loom clacking again, slower but alive. "I thought I'd lost my weave," she told me, folding a scarf, her eyes wet. But I wove myself back, sitting down. The band became her bridge, a lifeline to the craft that held her soul. She'd sit by the window, sunlight spilling over her, stretching to the hum of a radio, feeling the burn she'd once chased with her feet. And then, something bloomed, the class. There was Pedro, 68, who missed carving spoons, his hands too shaky now, Anna, 70, who longed to knead dough again, her wrists too frail, and little Sophia, 65, who'd once painted murals, her arms too stiff to lift a brush. They'd stretch together, the room humming with effort, the band snapping soft against the air. After, they'd linger, coffee in paper cups, stories spilling out. Pedro told of his first spoon, carved for his wife's soup. Anna shared her bread recipe, her voice warm. Sophia laughed about her mural of a cow that looked more like a cloud. Clara found a chorus, people who got it, who'd lost and were finding again. They'd cheer each wobble, swap tips, meet for pie at the diner down the road. It's not just the band, Clara said, her scarf soft in my hands. It's them. We're threading a new life together. I watched her that day, her booth bright with scarves, reds like autumn, blues like dusk, greens like the hills she loved. She'd stretch between sales, the band a quiet partner, her smile wide. Her world didn't shrink, it widened, stitch by stitch, because she dared to sit and reach. Dr. Emily Voss, a mobility expert from Johns Hopkins, backs this. Studies show seated resistance training boosts joint flexibility by 30% in folks over 65, cuts pain by 25%, and lifts mood like a rising sun. Clara's not dancing over her loom like she did at 40, but she's weaving, slow, steady, hers. I thought age took my hands, she said, her voice a thread of steel. But I took 'em back. Still with me? Drop a 1 below, I'd love to know you're here. Story 2. Floating back to myself. Then there's Luis, 73, who nearly let fear drown him whole. I met him at a lake cookout, his fishing rod propped against a stump, his eyes tracing the water, his hands knotted in his lap. Luis had been a waterman, kayaks slicing through rapids, poles dipping for trout, the lake his blood. He'd paddle till his arms burned, fish till the stars came out, the ripples his anthem. Folks at the cookout knew him, Luis the fisher, always casting, always hauling in a tail with his catch. But a hip surgery flipped his world, every step a gamble, every wobble a dread of crashing down. He'd freeze mid-stride, heart-hammering, terrified of losing the legs that had carried him through decades. His cabin became his shore, his muscles locking, his days drifting into gray. His buddy, Marco, saw the slump, Luis skipping the lake, staring at his rod like it was a ghost. Marco hauled him to a pool session at the Y, promising relief. Luis snorted, "Water? Now?" He saw himself flailing, a broken old man in goggles, the shame thicker than the chlorine. "It'll lift you," Marco swore, clapping his shoulder. So, with a scowl and a borrowed swimsuit, Luis stepped in, the water lapping at his calves, cool and strange. He sank deeper, hip deep, chest deep, and then, weightlessness. The pool cradled him, his hip sighing as gravity slipped away, the ache melting like ice in spring. He kicked, tentative, then bolder, the resistance tugging at muscles he'd buried under fear. I felt it, he told me, reeling in an imaginary line, his grin wide. Like the lake was holding me up again. Pain faded, replaced by a lightness he hadn't known since his paddling days. He'd linger after, floating, watching sunlight fracture on the surface, hope rising like a bobber. Fear unhooked itself, and the pool crowd, folks like Teresa, 71, a widow who missed her garden, and Juan, 69, a vet who'd lost his stride, became his crew. They'd splash through laps, race slow as turtles, trade stories over lemonade by the bleachers. Teresa spoke of her roses, Juan of his marches, Luis of the trout that got away. I thought I'd sunk, he said, his hat tipped back. But I swam back, to more than I'd lost. He started small, 5 minutes of kicks, then 10, then 20, the water his ally. He'd hum old fishing songs, the rhythm syncing with his strokes, his hip loosening with every lap. Teresa taught him a float trick, back arched, arms wide, and Juan challenged him to a race, their laughter bouncing off the tiles. The Y became his lake, a sanctuary where fear dissolved, where he wasn't just an old man with a bad hip but Luis again, alive in the current. It's not swimming, he mused, rod in hand. It's flying. Dr. Alan Rivera from Mayo Clinic nods. Aquatic exercise cuts joint stress by 40%, boosts strength 35%, and lifts spirits like a tide. Luis fishes now, not from a kayak but a dock, his legs steady, his world not a trap but a wide, rippling expanse. Comment 1. If you're still with me, let's keep this flowing. Story 3. Rolling with New Wings. Lucia, 80, taught me a walker's no surrender, it's a takeoff. I saw her at a street festival, her walker strung with tiny bells, her basket stuffed with fresh bread, her smile sharp as the noon sun. She'd fought it for years, saw it as a chain, a sign she'd lost the race. I'm not done, she'd huff, shuffling down her block, dodging wobbles like a boxer. She'd baked for decades, loaves for neighbors, rolls for church, her kitchen a warm hum of yeast and flour. But balance faded, her steps faltered, her confidence cracked. One dusk, crossing her drive, a pebble tripped her, a stumble, a thud, gravel biting her palms, the loaf she'd carried tumbling into the dirt. She sat there, breath ragged, pride stinging worse than her hands, the bells on her gate jingling mockingly. Later, by her stove, flour still on her apron, she decided, no more pretending. She'd seen the walker in her closet, shiny, cold, a gift from her son she'd shoved away. She pulled it out, the wheels squeaking, her hands shaking. First rolls were clumsy, down the hall, back again, the bells on her wrist now a faint echo of her fight. But then, a shift. She rolled to the mailbox, then the bakery, each step surer, her head higher. She'd barter for yeast, chat with the butcher, sit by the music without dread. Kids rang her bells, vendors nodded, she wasn't fading, she was there. It's not a cage, she told me, slicing bread, her voice firm. It's my ticket. Her world didn't shrink, it stretched. She'd roll to the park, the bells chiming, feeding ducks with crumbs, their quacks a chorus. Her neighbor, Paco, 82, saw it, started using his cane again, joining her walks, swapping tales of their baking days. They'd sit by the fountain, Paco's cane tapping, Lucia's bells ringing, a duo of defiance. I thought it'd tie me down, she said, handing me a roll. It set me free. Studies from the Mobility Institute show walkers boost independence by 50% in folks over 75, cutting fall risk by 30%. Lucia's kitchen sings again, slower, but hers, the walker her steady sous chef. Drop a 2, if you're still here, I'd love to hear from you. Story 4. Lifting more than weights. Mateo, 77, wrestled strength from a crumbling frame. I met him at a family reunion, his laugh rolling over the grill's sizzle, his hands flipping burgers. He'd been a builder, hammers swinging, beams hoisted, his body a machine. He'd lug bricks, climb scaffolds, his kids riding his shoulders after work, their squeals his fuel. But age gnawed at him, carrying a toolbox winded him, steps loomed like mountains. Is this it? He'd mutter, slumped by his shed, tools rusting beside him. Online workouts crashed, too fierce, and despair settled in, heavy as concrete. His nurse pitched a trainer, and Mateo flinched, someone barking at a wreck? But he met Carla, her steady nod saying, you're still solid. She handed him light weights, guided slow bends, her voice a lifeline, one more, you've got this. It burned, muscles roared, doubt clawed, but Carla held firm. First sessions were hell, his arms shook, his legs wobbled, sweat pooling on the mat. He'd curse under his breath, I'm too old, but Carla's calm cut through, you're not done. Then, wins. Standing without a gasp, tools lifted without a wince, steps climbed without dread. His grandkids tugged him to wrestle, giggling as he pinned them, their way to joy again. He joined a walking crew, old builders like him, boots crunching gravel, swapping stories of roofs they'd raised. It's not just my arms, he said, chest out. It's my fight. Carla brought more, resistance bands, bodyweight squats, her patience a scaffold. Mateo's shed hummed again, hammers swinging, wood shavings curling, his hands steady. His crew grew, Hector, 76, who missed his forge, and Nina, 79, who'd lost her garden spade's grip. They'd lift together, grunting, laughing, meeting for beers after, toasting small victories. I thought age broke me, Mateo grinned, flipping a patty. I built me back. Dr. Susan Lee from Stanford says strength training lifts muscle mass 20% in seniors, cuts fall risk by 35%, and boosts confidence like a second wind. Mateo's not hauling beams, but he's lifting life his way. Comment 2. If this hits home, let me know. Story 5. Stretching toward light. Sophia, 78, found grace in slow unfurling. I saw her at a farmer's market, basket brimming with basil, her step light as a breeze. Pain had boxed her in, stiff shoulders turned cooking into a chore, grabbing pots a gamble. She'd simmered sauces for years, garlic and tomatoes, her kitchen a dance of steam and spice. But joints locked, pain flared, and she'd retreat to her rocker, the stove cold. Too late, she'd sigh, her apron folded away. Her son insisted, "Stretch, it's for you too." Wary but worn, Sophia tried, arm sweeps, ankle rolls, a coach's gentle push, her breath shaky but stubborn. Her body softened, pain dulled, and she moved, really moved, again. First tries were clumsy, her arms trembled, her knees balked, but she kept at it, 10 minutes by the sink, then 20 by the window, sunlight warming her stretch. She'd chop onions now, stir ragu, stroll to the market without a groan, basil leaves brushing her fingers. "It's like breathing free," she said, eyes wet. Stretching wasn't just loosening, it was unshackling, proving age doesn't bind if you reach past it. Her kitchen sang again, alive with her tempo. She found a crew, Maria, 80, who missed her sewing, and Carlo, 77, who'd lost his golf swing. They'd stretch in the park, grass underfoot, sharing tales of sauces and stitches, their laughter a new spice. "I thought pain owned me," Sophia said, handing me a sprig. I owned it back. Research from the Flexibility Project shows stretching boosts range of motion 25% in folks over 70, cuts stiffness by 30%. Sophia's not twirling like she did at 50, but she's simmering, slow, rich, hers. Drop a 3. If you're still with me, I'm listening. Story 6. Balancing on new roots. Javier, 71, rebuilt trust after a fall cracked his world. I watched him at a church potluck, leading a slow Tai Chi flow, his calm a quiet anchor. A slip had undone him, down the porch steps, every step since a what if, his world shrinking to his armchair. His daughter pitched Tai Chi, and Javier scoffed, too soft, too strange. But he went, stumbling through poses, frustration simmering, his hands shaky, his pride bruised. Then, a shift. Each move grounded him, fear fading, confidence rising like dawn. He walked taller, led that flow, teaching others, finding purpose. The potluck became his haven, plates of tamales, breeze on his skin, no dread in his stride. "I'm not just steady," he grinned. "I'm back." His class grew, Rosa, 73, who feared her kitchen tiles, and Miguel, 70, who'd lost his dance steps. They'd sway together, steps sinking, sharing laughs over coffee after, a chorus of balance. "I thought I'd fall forever," Javier said, passing me a plate. I stood taller instead. Tai Chi studies from Harvard show it cuts fall risk 45% in seniors, lifts stability 40%. Javier's not sprinting, but he's rooted, firm, alive. Comment 3. If this resonates, let's keep it going. Story 7. Tuning to my own tempo. Last, Anna, 74, learned her body's song. I met her at a trailhead, her pack light, her eyes sharp. She'd been a hiker, ridges climbed, valleys crossed, her breath a steady pulse. But she'd pushed past cramps, stiffness, until a twisted ankle stopped her cold. Keep moving, she'd think, limping back, pain her shadow. One fall too many, and she listened, really tuned in. Shorter treks, bench breaks, a softer pace, she savored the pines, the hawk overhead, free from strain. "Rest isn't defeat," she said, adjusting her cap. "It's power." She moved with peace now, her body a friend, not a foe. Her trail crew, Luz, 76, who missed her orchard, and Paco, 75, who'd lost his stride, joined her, pausing to breathe, swapping tales of peaks and pies. "I thought more was better," Anna grinned, pointing at the ridge. "Less is mine." Mindful pacing cuts injury 30%, boosts endurance 25%, says the Aging Wellness Lab. Anna's not racing, but she's hiking, her way, her tune. Drop a 3. If you're still here, let's wrap this up strong. So here's my harmony for harmonic aging. After 65, a slower body isn't the end, it's a remix. Bands, pools, walkers, weights, stretches, tai chi, pacing, they're not limits, they're notes to a fuller score. Clara weaves, Louise fishes, Lucia bakes, and I'm here, splitting logs again, slower but singing. What's your next chord? Share it below, I read every word, and your voices keep this alive. Loved this? Hit like, pass it to someone who'd hum along, and follow Harmonic Aging for more. Let's keep the music going. What'll you try? Tell me.